Hey, John Crestani here, excited to talk to you about books and what I've learned from them. I've read over 1,000 books in my lifetime so far. I'm 35 years old, and let's dive right into it. It's been highly beneficial for my life, for my business, for my career, and just for my personal happiness. The first thing I've learned from reading books is it's highly effective at helping you be productive. One thing I do as part of my morning routine is I read 10 to 20 pages or maybe like a chapter of a book in the morning, and I found that really gets rid of that morning fog. I mean, who here has what I call morning fog, when they get out of bed and they don't want to get out of bed, and you're just kind of slow in the morning, slow thinking, slow moving, low energy. One thing I've realized is that it's all up here, that morning fog, and that if I read a book, I'm currently reading Andrzej Sapkowski, who wrote the Witcher series. Who here likes The Witcher? Huge fan. Witcher 3 probably best game ever. But I'm reading his book here, and I read a chapter every morning, and that gets my brain really going in that right place where I'm thinking, I'm experiencing something, and I get out of bed jazzed. So this is the first thing I do before I even get out of bed, and it really helps me get into the workday and be highly effective. The second major thing that I've learned from books is just general knowledge about all subjects.
You know, I read a book a day not to show off. It's again about the knowledge.
I mean, this is how I learned marketing, was through reading books about direct response advertising. When I started doing marketing in 2008, there weren't many YouTubers that were talking about this subject. In fact, I don't remember any YouTubers from 2008 that actually gave good marketing advice. And it was found in books. And the books are highly condensed, just exposés of what works in marketing. And what I loved about this book had a particular effect on me, is it just broke down real life examples of how to do marketing. Now, I've made millions of dollars. I've earned over $20 million by running a marketing business over these last 10 years or so. So I'd say that it's been fairly effective in my case. And by reading books, again, you are getting condensed versions of knowledge, whereas a lot of the stuff you get on YouTube are just you're listening to folks in real time. It's a one-to-one kind of knowledge transfer, as opposed to books where it's not just one-to-one, it's 10 times the amount of effort that went into writing, a 2-hour book. The third thing books have given me is perspective on the world. And this was a particular favorite of mine. It's called Quicksilver by my favorite author, Neal Stephenson. I've traveled around the jungles of the Philippines. I've sailed on pirate ships around the world, gotten accosted by Moroccan marauders and, taken prisoner by Turks, and made love with, a harem woman, and, after defeating the Turks at the Battle of Vienna. I've done so many things through books. It's given me a unique perspective on cultures and people and geographies that I never would have experienced had I not actually cracked open these books about very different places. Now, the fourth thing I've really learned a lot from books is that it's time consuming. It's time consuming to read. In fact, it's one of the best forms of entertainment. It's the biggest bang for your buck. I mean, here's one of my favorite books, clocking in at almost 1,000 pages right there. And that takes a lot of time to read. If you figure that you can read 25 pages an hour, that's 40 hours of entertainment for the price of 20 bucks. That's 50 cents an hour you might be spending on a new book. Even less, you're spending pennies on the dollar if you buy a used book. So you can get all of these great benefits and really have the cheapest form of entertainment available because books last. Now, I reconsidered this one, but it's morals. Books are the embodiment of, again, they're condensed knowledge. And throughout history, human beings haven't changed. Our biology is largely the same. Our history is, locked in. And I've learned a lot about being just a moral and a stand-up person through reading books. I've read the Bible, I've read the Bhagavad Gita, I've read the Quran, I've read the Mormon Bible, and I've read this book, which I find particularly interesting, which is the Hagakure, which is the Code of the Samurai. Very popular with a few, tech billionaires as well, like Larry Ellison. Is a big fan of the Hagakure. And learning how to be a good person in today's time of where there's really no moral standards, there's no standards for any sort of conduct in society anymore. People aren't having children, people aren't staying married, people aren't even acting in good faith. I found that books are time capsules. The morals that were written down thousands of years ago for being a good human being, it doesn't, just because technology has come about doesn't mean that changes. And books are a good guiding light for us to learn how to live as just good human beings. Oh, this is my favorite thing, which is travel. And I absolutely love traveling, and books have allowed me to travel even in times that I haven't been able to travel the world. I got into becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business and making millions of dollars because I wanted to travel. That was the whole goal. Because I couldn't do that working a job. And books, but at times in my life, in the past 10 years, there have been times I haven't been able to travel. I mean, there was the whole, vid thing that went on, the last 2 years with that disease, flu stuff. I won't even mention the names, but you couldn't travel then. I've also had multiple children. I've also been married at, a point in my life. And there were times I couldn't travel for social reasons or pressure reasons or all sorts of stuff. I'll probably address this in another video. But books have allowed me to travel the world. And here's a particular book that really helped me through a hard time in my life called The Mongoliad, also written by my favorite author, Neil Stephenson, where it follows a band of basically Christian knights as they, in the year 1200, as they travel across from Poland all the way to Mongolia to kill Genghis Khan. And this book was absolutely stunning and fantastic and takes you all the way across Eurasia in a really detailed perspective. And that sort of travel gives me that variety in my life, even when I can't physically travel for whatever reason. Dude, people joke about me because I'm so good at sleeping. I sleep great. I almost always get a quality sleep when I go to bed at night. And I'm also one of those guys who can just fall asleep in, sitting in a chair if I want to, if I'm bored, or I can fall asleep on the airplane or the bus. How many people here can sleep anywhere they want? Well, something that's great about sleep is it rejuvenates your brain and makes you ready for the next day. And it also gets rid of brain, you don't have as much brain fog. And I read before I go to sleep as well, not just when I wake up. And here's a funny book I read before I went to sleep called Kill Switch. It's about AI. You wouldn't think a book about killing something would necessarily be help you sleep, but for me, reading fiction books, science fiction, really just helps lull me into that imagination state. It takes you from out of your logical brain and just turns back the notch a little bit where you're relaxed. I find I have vivid dreams, very vivid dreams when I'm sleeping, because I get into deep sleep very fast. I used to measure my sleep with an Oura Ring, which is a fantastic product, by the way, and I have amazing sleep. But before you go out and buy a book or try to figure out time to start reading, let me go over a few things that you should avoid when getting into reading books. And also I'm going to answer some of the common questions of, how do you find time to read, or what should you read? Should you be reading fiction or nonfiction, etc.? So first off, to address what you should avoid is ghost-written nonfiction books. When you are getting a book from somebody like, let's use this one for example, Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. This book he verbalized in an interview okay, over a series of interviews. So it was what I call semi-ghost written. It's some of his knowledge, but it's through another person. Now, Donald Trump's obviously a billionaire, so he's a good person to hear from, but there are a lot of other authors that I find that are coming out with business books as a sort of feather in their cap, a sort of ego thing to say, oh, I had a book or I had a best-selling book. Now, it only takes 10,000 copies sold to be a best-selling book, and any rich person can buy 10,000 copies of their own book and turn it into a bestseller. So keep in mind that don't necessarily buy a book because it is a bestseller. Don't necessarily buy a book because it was written by, Bill Gates, or supposedly was written by Gary Vaynerchuk or Bill Gates or whoever. So keep that in mind. Don't necessarily go with the hype all the time. Now, in regards to making time to actually read, I look at it as additive. Of course, you're gonna have to do different stuff however you start your day, but I find reading books actually gets me in the zone and makes me more effective faster just by taking a simple 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes reading in the morning or at night. It really doesn't take any time away from me because, again, it is making me more productive, faster, and I get into my day and I get producing stuff on my computer much faster. Now, a little tip with reading books is what I like to do is I like to highlight or underline different passages, and as you see, I've written all over many of my books. Now, the reason I mark up my books is because sometimes I find ideas in science fiction books that I may want to create a business around, or I may eventually want to create a product around. And I will make sure to mark off that section. The best ideas come from science fiction writers I found for business. And Elon Musk says the same thing. Now, in nonfiction books, I do the same because there are books that I can learn a lot from. And what I do is I just make sure that whenever I want to re-go over that knowledge and re-implant that knowledge in my brain, I'm able to almost see my own Cliff Note version of a book by just reading my underlined or highlighted passages. I hope you enjoyed this video, and with that being said, if you're looking for a single book recommendation, I highly recommend The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This is a great starter book to get into reading. It's a fantastic story, and I believe it will help you immeasurably in starting your own business and going about life. I've read this book over a dozen times, and I continue to reread it throughout the years. And if you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and like this video and post a comment below. What's your favorite book? What is your favorite book you've ever read before? I'd love to hear from you. Love to see you as a subscriber on my channel. I come out with marketing and entrepreneurship advice primarily, but I talk about really anything that life has helped me learn. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.